We've been learning about sensuous sphere consciousness so far. Now, we will learn about the 15 types of Rupavacara Citta. Among the Rupavacara Citta, we have Kusala Citta, Vipaka Citta, and Kiriya Citta. So, just as in sense sphere consciousness, we have wholesome consciousness, resultant consciousness, and functional consciousness. Now, we'll study each of these 15 types of Rupavacara Citta one by one. When we talk about Rupavacara Citta, it means that it mostly moves about in the 15 form sphere realms. We just talked about these form sphere realms, right? Except for the realm of mindless beings, we have 15 form sphere realms, Rupaloka, right? So, all 15 types of form sphere consciousness mostly move about in these 15 form sphere realms. In order to gain these types of consciousness, we have to practice calmness meditation. When we gain jhana, this type of consciousness will arise. But if we don't gain jhana, this type of consciousness will not arise. So, it depends on jhana. Maybe one day you will experience one of these types of consciousness. Rupa means form, right? Rupavacara means form sphere, Kusala means wholesome, and Citta means consciousness. Let's start talking about the 15 types of Rupavacara Citta. 1. Vitaka Vikara Piti Sukhakagata Sahita Pathamajana. Sahita means connected. It means essentially the same thing as Sahagata. So, this first type of consciousness means first jhana wholesome consciousness together with Vitaka, Vikara, Piti, Sukha, and Ekagata, 5 kinds of mental factors. After we finish talking about consciousness, we'll learn about the various mental factors. For now, Vitaka means initial application. Initial application directs the mind to the object of meditation. If you read the suttas, discourses, you'll see the word Vitaka used in the sense of thinking or reflecting. In Abhidhamma, however, we translate it as initial application. Vikara means sustained application, Piti means enjoy or rapture, and Sukha means happiness. Here, Sukha is not used in the same way as with rootless consciousness, where it refers to bodily happiness. In this context, it means spiritual happiness, and Ekagata means one-pointedness of mind. If you remember the meanings of these 5 words, you'll understand all 15 types of form sphere consciousness. Jhana is another word that is very hard to translate directly into English, but a close translation is the word absorption. It's best, though, if we stick with the word jhana, but we should understand what this word means. The Pali word jhana is derived from the Pali word to contemplate or to burn up. The root word has those 2 meanings. So, jhana is so called because 1, it closely contemplates the object of meditation, and because 2, it burns up adverse states opposed to concentration. We'll talk later in detail about how to develop jhana, but I'll speak about it just briefly now. There are 40 subjects of meditation, about 10 of which cannot be used to gain jhana. With the other 30 subjects, however, jhana can be gained. The 40 subjects of meditation include the 10 kasinas, the 10 impurities, the 10 reflections, the 4 illimitables, the 1 perception, the 1 analysis, and the 4 arupajhanas. We'll be talking later about temperaments too, but our individual temperaments will determine what subject of meditation is suitable for us. In order to gain jhana, we have to practice calmness meditation. Using one of the 30 subjects of meditation that can give rise to Rupavacara Citta, or Rupajhana. I'd like to give you an example. If you'd like to gain jhana, you might choose to work with one of the kasinas. One is the circle of the earth. The scriptures say that the earth image should be 1 span and 4 fingers away from you. A span is about 18 inches. So you put this image in front of you. Now, you concentrate your mind on this earth image and repeatedly say, earth, 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 or use the Pali word pathavi. You do this until you're very familiar with the object. Eventually, a state is reached where you can visualize the object even with closed eyes. As you sit there with your eyes closed, saying, earth, 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 you'll see the same image very clearly. As you continue to keep your mind on this visualized image, it will eventually develop into a conceptualized image. This means that it possesses neither form nor color. Before, we used to see form, but now there's no form or color. Instead, there's just a mode of appearance, and it's very smooth. Then, you will gain the first jhana, as the 5 mental factors associated with that jhana, that is, Vitaka, Vikara, Piti, Sukha, and Ekagata, have occurred. We experience the following thought process as we gain jhana. 1. Bhavanga. 2. Manadvaravajana, mind door adverting consciousness arises and disappears. 3. Parikama. wholesome consciousness arises and disappears. 4. Upakara, proximity arises and disappears. 5. Anuloma, adaptation arises and disappears. 6. Gotrabu, change of lineage, which overcomes the sense sphere, arises and disappears. 7. Apana, jhana occurs. Even though we practice vipassana meditation, we get close to jhana too. We experience upakara. With vitakka, our mind is directed toward the object of meditation. Vacara keeps our mind on the object of meditation. With piti, we feel rapture and joy. With sukha, we feel happiness, and with ekaggata, our mind is one-pointed. We can experience this. It's not jhana, but it's very close. If you practice samatha meditation, maybe you can experience jhana too. It depends on our goal. Do you want jhana or magga phala? So, first jhana, wholesome consciousness together with vitakka, vacara, piti, sukha, and ekaggata. These 5 mental factors, and you will gain the first jhana. If you gain the first jhana and don't lose it when you die, you'll be reborn among the first 3 Brahmaloka, either the realm of Brahma's retinue, the realm of Brahma's ministers, or the realm of the great Brahmas. You must be reborn in one of those realms if you have jhana at the moment of death. Perhaps you're starting to understand how we are reborn amongst the 31 planes of existence according to our good or bad karma. So, the first jhana has those 5 factors, right? Now we'll talk about the second jhana, and the second type of rupavacara citta. 2. Vacara piti sukha sahita dutiya jhana. This jhana has no vitakka, right? It has been eliminated. Why? The person who gains first jhana wants to gain the second, higher jhana. As he practices, he feels that vitakka is very close to being a mental hindrance, so he doesn't want it to arise. As he continues practicing and eliminates vitakka, he gains dutiya jhana, the second jhana. This is why dutiya jhana, second jhana, is wholesome consciousness together with vacara, piti, sukha, and ekaggata, only these 4. 3. Piti sukha ekaggata sahita tatiya jhana. So, now this person would like to gain this third, higher jhana. He continues practicing meditation on the same object of meditation until both vitakka and vacara are eliminated. He eliminates vacara because he feels that it is very similar to vitakka, and therefore could become a mental hindrance. This is why third jhana wholesome consciousness is together with piti, sukha, and ekaggata. It still has these 3. 4. Sukha ekaggata sahita katuta jhana. Now, this person would like to gain this higher, 4th jhana. He continues to observe his object of meditation but begins to consider piti as dangerous because it creates an interest in the object of meditation. This strikes the meditator as being very close to a mental hindrance, so he eliminates piti. When he does, he gains the 4th jhana. This 4th jhana is accompanied by sukha and ekaggata. It still has happiness and one-pointedness of mind. 5. Upekakaggata sahita pankamajhana. As the person continues to practice meditation, he thinks that sukha is also very close to being a mental hindrance. As he eliminates it, he attains this 5th jhana. The 5th jhana is together with upeka, equanimity, and one-pointedness of mind. After you gain the first jhana, if you die without losing your jhana, that is, you still have it at death, you'll be reborn in the first jhana plane, those first 3 Brahma realms we talked about. If you gain the second and third jhanas, you'll be reborn in the second jhana plane, or the 4th, 5th or 6th Brahma realms. If you gain the 4th jhana, you'll be reborn in the 3rd jhana plane, or the 7th, 8th or 9th Brahma realms. If you gain the 5th jhana, you'll be reborn in the 10th or 11th realms, vihaphala, the realm of great reward, or the realm of mindless beings. However, if you are an anagami, never returner, and gain the 5th jhana, you will be reborn in one of the 5 pure abodes, suddhavasa. Only never returners can be reborn in those realms, and that's why they are called the pure abodes. I'd like to add something that is special. When you attain the 5th jhana, your breathing ceases. You will stop breathing. These first 5 types of consciousness are rupavacara kusala, wholesome, citta. We also have rupavacara vipaka, resultant, citta, and rupavacara kiriya, functional, citta. The names of the remaining 10 types of consciousness in the latter 2 groups are the same as those in the first group of wholesome consciousness. Resultant consciousness here means that if you gain the first jhana wholesome consciousness, your rebirth will be in the first jhana plane with the first type of relinking, resultant, consciousness. In other words, your wholesome consciousness and your resultant consciousness are identical. In the same way, if you gain the fifth jhana wholesome consciousness, your relinking consciousness will be the fifth resultant consciousness, and you'll be reborn in the corresponding plane. Arahants, of course, don't have to be reborn again after they die. The 5 kinds of supernormal knowledge. If a worldling, a sotapanna, a sakadagami, or an anagami gains the fifth form sphere wholesome consciousness, they can gain supernormal knowledge. For an arahant, it would be the fifth form sphere functional consciousness. There are 5 kinds of supernormal knowledge. 1. Various psychic powers. You can fly through the air, walk on a river, or create replicas of yourself. There are old accounts in Burma of elder monks who practiced meditation in the jungle but were seen in various other places at the same time. Somebody might say, "I offered food to the elder monk today, but..." His friend might reply, "That can't be right, because he was in Bangkok today." In other words, the same person could be seen in different places at the same time. This is due to the meditator's psychic power. They can think about some place and their body will reappear there. 2. Celestial ear. You can hear everything. If you want to hear what someone's talking about, it's no problem for you. You can hear what gods or people in China are talking about. 3. Discerning others' thoughts. This means the ability to know what other people are thinking, i.e., read minds. 4. Reminiscence of past births. This means remembering previous lives. You can know whether in a past life you were a man, a woman, rich, poor, pretty, or ugly. You can know what you were like over many, many existences. 5. Celestial eye. If you want to see hell or heaven, or someone overseas, you can see it. You can see what people are doing in their homes. Whoever gains the fifth jhana can gain this supernormal knowledge, including worldlings. To experience this higher intelligence, we have to practice calmness, samatha, meditation until we gain fifth jhana. And depending upon the depth of our concentration, we can see or hear more or less. In other words, the strength of our supernormal power depends on the strength of our concentration. The 5 mental hindrances. We have to practice a lot to develop jhana, and if a mental hindrance appears, our jhana disappears. For example, if you get angry, your jhana will disappear. Ill will is one kind of hindrance. We talked a bit ago about how jhana closely contemplates an object or burns up mental hindrances, right? We should understand what mental hindrances are. According to the scriptures, in the time of the Buddha there was a novice monk who was flying through the air when he heard a girl singing. As he became attached to the sound of her voice, he lost his jhana and fell to the ground. See, mental hindrances behave like this. Be careful. The 5 mental hindrances are the opposites of the 5 factors of the first jhana. Even if we practice insight vipassana meditation, we still need to understand these 5 mental hindrances. They are very dangerous for meditators. These are the 5 mental hindrances. 1. Sloth and torpor, thina mitta. Vitakka is its opposite. Vitakka, one of the mental factors of the first jhana, is initial application. When you have vitakka, you direct your mind to the object of meditation, thus preventing sloth and torpor, sleepiness, from occurring. When you have good concentration and observe your object of meditation, sloth and torpor go away. So vitakka is the opposite of sloth and torpor. 2. Doubt. When you have vacara, sustained application, you keep your mind on the object of meditation. When you do, doubt, the opposite of vacara, does not arise. 3. Ill will. Pity is its opposite. When you have the joy of pity, you do not have ill will at that time. That's why pity is the opposite of ill will. 4. Restlessness and remorse. Sukha is their opposite. When you have sukha, you have no restlessness or remorse. Here, remorse means feeling sorry about something bad you've done. So when you have sukha, neither restlessness nor remorse occurs. Upekkha is connected with the fifth jhana, right? Upekkha is also the opposite of restlessness and remorse. Both sukha and upekkha are vedana, feeling, and the opposites of restlessness and remorse. 5. Sensual desire. Ekagata, one-pointedness of mind, is its opposite. When you concentrate your mind on your object of meditation and have one-pointedness, sensual desire does not occur. And that's why one-pointedness is the opposite of sensual desire. So this is how jhana burns up mental hindrances. If we have jhana, these 5 mental hindrances are temporarily far away from us. Even without jhana, if we have strong concentration, then we don't feel sleepy, we don't have doubt, we don't have ill will, our mind is not wandering and we don't feel restless, we have no remorse, and there's no sensual desire. Temporarily, all of these mental hindrances are stopped. If there's so much as one mental hindrance present, our mind is disturbed. If we're sleepy, we feel we need to get up from our meditation and take a nap. If we have doubt, we'll second-guess our meditation technique and lose confidence. If we feel ill will, have remorse about something, or feel restless, we can't sit in meditation long before we decide to get up. And if we have sensual desire, I want this, or we keep thinking about sensual objects, our meditation is disturbed. So we practice meditation to get rid of these 5 mental hindrances. We have to remember these. We have 3 terms connected to various aspects of jhana. 1. Jhana. Jhana refers to vitakka, vacara, piti, sukha, and ekagata collectively. 2. Jhananga. Jhananga, or the factors of jhana, refers to vitakka, vacara, piti, sukha, and ekagata individually. 3. Jhana consciousness. Jhana consciousness refers to form sphere consciousness and formless sphere consciousness. In other words, jhananga together with consciousness is jhana consciousness. Starting next week, we'll talk more about these 5 factors of jhana and how they differ. For now, I think time's up. Thank you. Any questions? Q. Is it a hindrance if we want to attain supernormal knowledge? If we have attachment, then it's a hindrance. We should have no attachment. The 5 factors of jhana. Today is February 14, 1998. Good morning, and happy Valentine's Day. Last week we discussed form sphere consciousness, the 5 jhanas, right? When we practice calmness meditation, we can attain jhana. And if our jhana is highly developed, we can obtain the higher psychic powers. Today, I would like to explain the factors of jhana in a bit more detail. As you already know, the first jhana is wholesome consciousness together with vitakka, vacara, piti, sukha and ekagata. So I would like to explain each of these factors, and how they differ. In English, we translate vitakka as initial application, vacara as sustained application, piti as rapture, sukha as happiness, and ekagata as one-pointedness. Also, upekkha is equanimity. To start with, vitakka and vacara differ in that vitakka is like the flying of a bee toward a flower while vacara is like the bee hovering around a flower. Vitakka directs the mind toward the object, right? And vacara stays around the object. So, this is a simile of a bee. We can think of other similes too. When you shoot a gun, the bullet first coming out is like vitakka but the bullet traveling until it reaches the target is vacara. A bird taking off and starting a flight is like vitakka, while the bird flying through the air is like vacara. A plane first taking off is like vitakka, but the plane cruising through the sky is like vacara. When you hit a drum, the first moment of sound is like vitakka, while the sound continuing until it fades away is like vacara. When your car first starts to drive, it's like vitakka but as it keeps driving toward the destination it's like vacara. Holding a big diamond ring on your left hand is like vitakka, while using the other hand to examine the diamond is like vacara. These similes illustrate the difference between the two. Vitakka and vacara occur at the same time, though. Next, piti and sukha differ in that piti creates an interest in the object, while sukha is the enjoyment of the object. Here's a simile. Piti is like when we're traveling out of state and driving on the freeway. We feel very hungry, our fuel is almost gone, and our stomach is upset and we need to find a restroom. Then, as we're driving, we see a sign for fuel, food, and restrooms. How do we feel? This is like piti, which creates an interest in the object. Ah, I get to use the restroom and will get gas and food soon. You're not enjoying these things yet, but you're creating an interest in them. So, when you get to the place, where do you go first? The restroom, right? Then you grab some food, fill your tank, and continue on. Your enjoyment of these things is like sukha. See how piti and sukha differ. Even though we may say that we feel piti, it's not a feeling. Piti is a kind of mental factor. It belongs to sankhara, one of the 5 aggregates that we'll be talking about in detail later. In brief, the 5 aggregates include form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Piti is not a feeling, instead, it belongs to the sankhara, mental formations, aggregate. Sukha, on the other hand, is a feeling. It belongs to the feeling, vedana, aggregate. That's the difference between the two. Although we're specifically talking about jhana here, whether you practice samatha or vipassana meditation, you will sometimes experience piti, which is of 5 kinds. 1. Minor piti. Minor piti causes the flesh to creep, gooseflesh, or goosebumps. When you sit in meditation and gain some concentration, you'll sometimes feel cold and have goosebumps. This is minor piti. 2. Momentary piti. Momentary piti is like a flash of lightning. It doesn't stay long, just a flash. You'll feel this. 3. Showering piti. Showering pity is like breakers on a seashore. If you're at the seashore, you can see the waves rolling in toward the breakers. The waves break and then go back out. This type of pity will feel like this. When we sit in meditation, even vipassana meditation, close our eyes and gain concentration, our body may feel like it's swaying back and forth. But if we open our eyes, we'll see that we're not actually moving. 4. Uplifting pity. Uplifting pity enables one to float in the air, to lift up our bodies. My first meditation teacher once told us a story. It doesn't matter whether we believe it or not. He told us about a time when he opened a meditation retreat center in a town in Upper Burma. A lot of people came for this 1-month retreat, including a particular gentleman from a countryside village some 15 or 20 miles from the town where the retreat was being held. The gentleman joined the retreat and practiced meditation for 2 weeks. One day, the gentleman's daughter came home from work in the evening and found her father sitting cross-legged and with closed eyes in meditation in front of their home altar. She wondered, why is Daddy home from the retreat already? Later that evening, she decided to ask her meditating father what was going on. She quietly said, "Daddy?" When he opened his eyes, she asked him, "Why'd you come back home? Why didn't you stay to the end of the retreat?" He replied, "I don't know. I don't know how I got back home." The daughter loaded him into their family ox cart. There were no cars in the village in those days, and took him back to the retreat center. This is uplifting pity. It's very strange. Here's another story involving uplifting pity. 30 years ago, I did a retreat with a friend at a meditation center in Rangoon. My friend was a 16-year-old high school student at the time. I still remember his name. Every evening we had to report our meditation experiences. What we saw, what we felt, what problems we were having, to the teacher. One evening, my friend said to the teacher, "When I sat in meditation today, I felt my body lift up, little by little, until my head hit the ceiling. Then I came back down." He'd actually lost contact with the earth. Many of us heard him report this strange experience to the teacher. This is uplifting pity. In the time of the Buddha, there was a young lady who lived in a village at the base of a mountain. One day there was a ceremony atop the mountain, but the young lady's parents wouldn't allow her to join them in the ceremony. After her parents left, the young lady sat in front of their house and looked up at the mountain. She began to reflect upon the Buddha, his doctrine, and his holy disciples. As she did, her body began to float up into the sky. Eventually, she floated up to the top of the mountain. It only took her about 30 minutes to float up there. As she reached the top of the mountain, the young lady's parents asked, "How'd you get up here?" She said, "I don't know. I was looking up here and thinking about the Buddha, his doctrine, and his holy disciples, and I just ended up here." This is uplifting pity. When you practice meditation and gain enough concentration, you'll experience one of these types of pity I've been talking about. 5. Pervading pity. Pervading pity is like if we take cotton and put it into oil or water. These liquids will pervade the cotton, right? You'll feel like this. When you sit in meditation, you'll feel your body expand. It'll feel very big. There won't be any pain, but it'll feel like you're expanding like a balloon. Your head may feel very large, maybe 10 times its normal size. This is pervading pity. These are the 5 kinds of pity. If we don't understand how pity manifests, we might experience one of these and think we've gained enlightenment. But we haven't. We'll come across at least one of these before we gain enlightenment. The next factor of jhana is ekaggata, or one-pointedness of mind. This is like when we light a candle in a windless room. If we do, the flame is very steady, it doesn't move. Ekaggata is like this. We are trying to gain this one-pointedness of mind. That's why we practice sitting and walking meditation all the time. Even though we're talking about jhana here, if we have strong enough concentration while practicing insight vipassana meditation, we will experience vitakka, vacara, pity, sukha, and ekaggata. These 5 factors aren't only for jhana, they can come together when we are close to gaining jhana. 5th jhana also has the factor of upekkha, right? When we talked about upekkha earlier, it was in the context of unwholesome consciousness. But that kind of upekkha is different. The upekkha of 5th jhana is not ordinary, it's special. It is developed by strong willpower and is very subtle. So, 1st jhana has 5 factors: vitakka, vacara, pity, sukha, and ekaggata. 2nd jhana has 4 factors: vacara, pity, sukha, and ekaggata. Vitakka has been eliminated. 3rd jhana has 3 factors: pity, sukha, and ekaggata. 4th jhana has 2 factors: sukha and ekaggata. See how the factors are eliminated one by one, step by step, as jhana develops higher and higher. And fifth jhana has two factors, upeka and ekagata, rebirth consciousness. We recently talked about how if we gain first jhana and die without losing our jhana, we will be reborn in the first jhana Brahma plane. That's the first three Brahma realms, right? Where will we be reborn if we gain the second or third jhanas? We'll be reborn in the second jhana Brahma plane, which includes the fourth, fifth and sixth Brahma realms. What about fourth jhana? We can be reborn in the third jhana Brahma plane, which consists of the seventh, eighth and ninth Brahma realms. As for the fifth jhana, we can be reborn in the fourth jhana Brahma plane, which includes the 10th through 16th Brahma realms. With regard to the 12th through 16th Brahma realms, which are called the pure abodes, only anagami, non-returners, can be reborn there. No ordinary worldling people, stream enterers, or once returners. When we are reborn in one of these jhana Brahma planes, what is our rebirth consciousness? It is one of the 5 types of resultant consciousness, or rupavikara vipaka citta. If you're reborn in the first jhana Brahma plane, your rebirth consciousness should be the first type, right? In other words, it should be first jhana resultant consciousness. This resultant consciousness is the same as form sphere wholesome consciousness. The function of first jhana resultant consciousness is rebirth consciousness in the Brahma plane. If you gain second jhana and die without losing your jhana, you'll be reborn in the second jhana plane. Your rebirth consciousness should be the second type, or second jhana resultant consciousness. If you gain third jhana, you'll be reborn in the second jhana plane and your rebirth consciousness should be third jhana resultant consciousness. If you gain fourth jhana, after you die you'll be reborn in the third jhana plane. Your rebirth consciousness should be fourth jhana resultant consciousness. And if you gain the fifth jhana, you will be reborn in the fourth jhana Brahma plane and your rebirth consciousness will be fifth jhana resultant consciousness. There are also 5 types of functional consciousness, right? They are experienced only by Buddhas and Arahants. In the sensual sphere, we have 10 kinds of rebirth consciousness. In general, for human beings and devas of the 6 celestial realms, one of the 8 types of sense sphere beautiful resultant consciousness functions as rebirth consciousness. Animals, and other beings in woeful states, such as hell beings and ghosts, have santirana rootless consciousness as their rebirth consciousness. This is investigating consciousness, right? Upeka santirana. There are 7 types of rootless unwholesome resultant consciousness. Among these 7 types, there's one upeka santirana, or investigating consciousness. That is the rebirth consciousness of all beings in the woeful states, all animals, all hell beings, all ghosts. This is their rebirth, or relinking, consciousness. Among the 8 types of rootless wholesome resultant consciousness, there is also one that is upeka santirana. The name is the same as for rootless unwholesome resultant consciousness. But the upeka santirana that is wholesome resultant consciousness functions as rebirth consciousness for some degraded devas, deities, of the human, not heaven, realm. They are devas, but they stay in the human world. With this upeka santirana as their rebirth consciousness, they are very minor devas without much power. So, in the sense sphere world, we have these 10 kinds of rebirth consciousness. Although human beings have one of the 8 types of sense sphere beautiful resultant consciousness, people born blind, deaf or dumb have wholesome rootless upeka santirana as their rebirth consciousness, just like minor devas. As an example, some people are reborn blind because during their previous lives they did good things with indifference and without knowledge, perhaps as a matter of tradition. Maybe they used to kill animals for food to serve for public meals. So, in this example, they did good things, which led to human rebirth, but these things were based upon greed, anger or delusion, and so it becomes santirana, or rootless wholesome resultant consciousness. Here, their kusala was very little, maybe 10%, and their akusala was 90%. If this bad karma gives rebirth consciousness as santirana, the person may be born blind or deaf. But because they also receive kusala vipaka, they might experience pleasant smells, tastes, or tactile sensations in their next life. Even though they are handicapped, they might also sleep well and be generally healthy because of the results of their past good karma. As another illustration of how this might manifest, while most human beings develop eye sensitivity after about 11 weeks in the womb, some people don't. This is santirana. On the other hand, a person may develop eye sensitivity at the usual time but later lose their sight due to a virus or an accident. This is the result of past akusala karma. Also, some people might have good eyes or ears, and so on, but don't mentally function very well. That's because their rebirth consciousness was Santirana. Some people with congenital issues like blindness can still gain enlightenment, obtain higher education degrees, and so on, though. This kind of person is not Santirana. Rather, their rebirth consciousness was one of the 8 types of sense sphere beautiful resultant consciousness. Our rebirth consciousness, bhavanga, when we sleep, and the last moment of this existence, kuti, are all the same type of consciousness. In other words, if the first wholesome consciousness, somanasa sahagata jnana sampayuta asankarika, gives results near the time of one's death, then rebirth consciousness and the bhavangas of the next life will be of the same type. As we sleep, this same consciousness arises again and again and again. Death consciousness, here, like rebirth consciousness and bhavanga, is not kusala, it is vipaka. And this death consciousness will also be of the same type. So, rebirth consciousness is the result of the type of consciousness that arose at the approach of death. In the example I just gave, wholesome consciousness is the cause, and rebirth consciousness takes place as a result. The wholesome consciousness that causes rebirth consciousness to result is different from death consciousness. Wholesome consciousness occurs many times over the course of one's life, of course, but a particularly strong wholesome consciousness will become the cause of rebirth consciousness. Death consciousness, on the other hand, is caused by wholesome and unwholesome actions or wholesome and unwholesome consciousness. Since people sometimes confuse death consciousness, kuti citta, for the cause of rebirth consciousness, padasandhi citta, I'll elaborate. As a person is about to die, an object presents itself to the mind door, causing the bhavanga to vibrate then disappear. Next, there are 5 weak jivana thought moments, which serve to determine the nature of padasandhi citta. Just after, kuti citta arises, signaling the end of that existence. This kuti citta is identical to the padasandhi citta and all the bhavanga cittas of that life now ending. It is resultant consciousness that was produced by the same karma that produced the padasandhi citta and the bhavanga cittas of that life. So, the jivana process that occurs just prior to kuti citta determines the nature of padasandhi citta. The very object that presents itself to the mind door, causing the bhavanga to vibrate, is determined by 4 types of karma: weighty, death proximate, habitual, or residual. Padasandhi citta experiences the same object as the jivanas that arose just before kuti citta. This padasandhi citta, all bhavanga cittas, and the kuti citta of the next life experience that object. In summary, padasandhi citta is not the result of kuti citta, it is the result of past karma from one's life. Kuti citta merely conditions padasandhi citta in the sense that the former immediately precedes the latter. Like padasandhi citta, kuti citta is a vipaka citta. As it is a result of past karma, it lacks the power to give results. A few more words about form sphere jhana. I've been talking about this 5-fold method of jhana. But there's also a 4-fold method of jhana. With the 4-fold method, the first jhana has 5 factors, the second jhana has 3 factors, the third jhana has 2 factors, and the fourth jhana has 2 factors. So, the 5-fold method has 5 jhanas and the 4-fold method has 4 jhanas. Which method applies depends on the person. For example, we normally take 1 year for first grade, 1 year for second grade, and so on. But some people are very smart. After midterm, they might take another class and end up skipping ahead. It's the same with jhana. With the 4-fold method, someone gains first jhana then eliminates vitakka and vacara together to gain second jhana. Then, he gains third jhana together with sukha and ekagata, and fourth jhana together with upekka and ekagata. So, according to this method, we have 4 rupajhanas. But normally we have 5 rupajhanas.